Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of On Our Terms, a video series brought to you by AIA Contract Documents. My name is Cody Thomas, and I have Michael Bombo with me. Today, we will continue walking through the AIA B101 by breaking down the owner's budget section found in section 1.1.3. And Mike, if you'll take it away.
Thank you, Cody. As Cody mentioned, we're talking about the owner's budget for the cost of the work today. This section is short and sweet. There doesn't look to be too much to it, but I'd have to say is probably one of the most important sections in the initial information section, which makes it one of the most important sections in the entire agreement. I don't have data on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if claims related to budget exceeded all other claims combined on when it comes to the owner-architect relationship. We don't have a lot of words on the screen. We don't have a lot of words in the document, but when it comes to defining the owner's budget for the cost of the work, it is an extremely important provision. And as with all of our other initial information sections, the more detail that can be provided here, the better. Discussing the budget in the initial information section gives the parties the opportunity to understand all of the elements that are included and possibly more importantly, not included in the budget. And when you think about, I think it's the preceding section or one of the preceding sections is the owner's program. So when you are comparing what's written in the owner's program with what is included versus not included in the budget for the cost of the work, that is extremely important. And this is an opportunity to make sure that the program and the budget match up, at least in terms of what the initial ideas are for the scope of the project and the costs of the project. Now, if you're looking at our document, you can see, essentially one line and an area to write the information related to the budget. And as I said, you want to make sure that this information is as clear and detailed as possible, which is why it suggests, if possible, to provide a line item breakdown. If you have an extremely complicated budget or program for a project, and you just write that the overall budget for the project is, $30 million, I don't think that's going to get you there in the type of detail that you need. You really are going to need a line item breakdown of how the various elements of the project are to be achieved and at what costs are going to be achieved at. So, that can be a very detailed document. So I'd encourage anyone who's working with the document to consider just referencing an outside exhibit. There's a lot of budgeting software out there that can produce an exhibit that you could reference and incorporate into the agreement itself. But again, the more detail in the budget, the better that both parties understand the budget and what's included in the budget, the better off both parties will be throughout the rest of the project. Now, the budget has ramifications throughout the entire agreement and the entire project. I'm sure no one is surprised by that. But just a sampling of some of the things that each of the parties have to do with regard to the budget in the B101, and this would probably be true on any type of owner-architect agreement. Once you have an initial budget, that budget needs to be updated and refined, and that obligation is on the owner as part of their overall budget for the project. As the project proceeds, the budget needs to change to accommodate for changes on the project or market changes. There's lots of items that can impact the owner's budget throughout the course of a project. If there's going to be a significant increase or decrease, the owner needs to notify the architect. In the B101, the architect is the one who's responsible for providing estimates in terms of the design related to the budget for the costs of the work. So certainly the architect needs to be aware of any increases or decreases in the budget. If the budget does change, there needs to be a corresponding adjustment in either project scope, quality, or both. If you reduce the budget, you can no longer have gold fixtures in your bathroom. You're going to have to go for something a little less expensive. So there needs to be a give and take between what the budget's at, what the project scope requires, and what the quality of some of the finishes are or other elements of the project will be. And also, for certain projects, if the architect is going to be compensated based on a percentage basis, a percentage of the budget for the cost of the work, the budget will need to be updated, appropriate, and then the owner is obligated to compensate the architect based on whatever percentage basis the parties have agreed to. When it comes to the architect, the biggest obligation they have with regard to the budget is designing to budget. An owner has a budget. They certainly don't want a project to come in, tenfold what their budget was. They are engaging an architect to provide a design that's consistent, that meets the program and is consistent with the budget. That's why in the owner's responsibilities, there's a give and take on project scope and quality as it relates to the budget, because ultimately the architect has an obligation to design the project within the budget. And we have provisions in the B101 in most of our owner-architect agreements that if you reach the point of bidding and the bids are not coming in consistent with the budget for reasons that the architect could foresee, the failure to provide a design to the budget will result in an obligation on the architect having to do some redesign work that's uncompensated. So again, the initial information budget is important because ultimately the architect is going to be obligated to design to the budget. Now it's the evolving budget, but again, having a good understanding and making sure that everything is included in the initial information budget is going to have ramifications throughout the project. So spend as much time, get as much detail as you can on the owner's budget for the cost of the work. I think that hits the basics, Cody, so let me know if there's anything else you think I should cover. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks for all that great information. I was curious what all is typically included in the term cost of the work.
That's a good question, actually. Yeah, when you're talking about the budget for the cost of the work, what all is included in that? What are we really budgeting for? There is a section in the owner-architect agreement that defines it. Any agreement should probably define, what constitutes the cost of the work. Under our agreement, the cost of the work will be the total cost to the owner to construct all elements of the project designed or specified by the architect, including general conditions costs for the contractor, overhead, and profit. We also clarify, and I guess this is kind of important too, that the cost of the work will also include the reasonable value of any labor, materials, and equipment either donated to or furnished by the owner. So even though the owner's not, incurring direct costs related to something that was donated to it or something that's self-performing, it still goes into the overall cost of the work definition. And that has relevance if you think back to the parties' obligations. If the architect's going to be compensated on the cost of budget of the cost of the work, it should be the total value, not, you shouldn't be able to deduct things that were donated to the owner or the owner self-performed. Similarly, the architect can't take advantage of things that were donated to the owner when it's talking about whether or not it's designed to met its obligation to design to budget. There are a few things too that the budget does not include, at least in our definition. The cost of the work does not include compensation of the architect, the costs of the land, rights of way, financing, contingencies for changes in the work, or other costs that are the responsibility of the owner. So those things are considered outside of the budget. And I would say in any contract, it's important, if you have something like a budget that is going to be key to your entire agreement, you need to have clarity on a budget for what is included and what is not included, again, to avoid disputes and misunderstandings throughout the project. So that was a good question. I'm glad we covered that.
Yeah, that was a great response, and I appreciate your time and walking us through section 1.1.3. As always, this video is not intended to be legal advice, and always recommend that you seek legal counsel if you have any additional questions regarding your case. And I want to thank everyone again for listening, and we'll see you next time.